You've entered void of rules, a realm where normal constraints cease to exist. But beware, traveller, there is one rule here. You've got to hit subscribe. Seriously, it's the only rule we have. We just reached 1,000 brave souls, and we're hunting for 9,000 more to complete our dark ritual. I mean, reach our next goal, so subscribe. Or don't. But remember, the void remembers those who defy the only rule. Now let's get into today's video. The moment I stepped onto Mackinac Island, I knew there was something different about this place. The absence of cars, the clip-clop of horse hooves on cobblestone streets, and the imposing Victorian silhouette of the Grand Hotel, perched on the bluff, overlooking Lake Huron. It all felt like stepping back in time. My name is Jackson Mercer, and I had just accepted what I thought would be the opportunity of a lifetime. Head bartender at the world-famous Grand Hotel. The ferry docked on a perfect June morning. I clutched my acceptance letter in one hand and my suitcase in the other as I made my way up the long hill toward the hotel. The Grand Hotel had stood majestically on this island since 1887, its massive 660-foot porch stretching across the front like welcoming arms. The pristine white facade glowed in the morning sun, and American flags fluttered in the gentle breeze coming off the lake. A doorman in an impeccable burgundy uniform greeted me at the entrance. "Mr. Mercer, I presume. We've been expecting you. Miss Eleanor is waiting in the Geranium Bar to meet you." I followed him through the ornate lobby, past gilded mirrors and floral arrangements, bigger than my first apartment. The hotel's interior was a riot of colour, bold stripes, vibrant florals, and deep jewel tones that somehow all worked together in an elegant symphony that whispered of old money and timeless taste. The Geranium Bar was located just off the main dining room, with large windows overlooking the Straits of Mackinac. Despite the early hour, the bar was impeccably set up, crystal glasses gleaming, bottles arranged in perfect formation. Behind the long mahogany bar stood a woman who could only be Eleanor Winters, the legendary bartender who had worked at the Grand for over 30 years. She was tall and straight-backed, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Despite being in her 60s, her hands moved with deft precision as she polished a glass. She looked up as I approached, her eyes the pale blue of winter ice. "Jackson Mercer," she said, not a question but a statement. "Welcome to the Grand. I trust your journey was pleasant?" "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity." She nodded curtly and set down her polishing cloth. "The Grand Hotel is not like other establishments, Mr. Mercer. Our guests expect perfection, and we provide it. But more importantly, there are traditions here, protocols that must be followed without question." She reached beneath the bar and produced an ornate leather-bound book. The cover was darkened with age, the words "Bartender's Code of Conduct" embossed in faded gold lettering. "This," she said, placing it carefully before me, "is more important than any mixing technique you've ever learned. Before you pour a single drop at this bar, you will memorize every word in this book." I reached for it, but she placed her hand firmly on the cover. "These rules are not suggestions, Mr. Mercer. They are not quaint traditions or superstitions. They are survival." Her eyes held mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "Do I make myself perfectly clear?" "Yes, Miss Winters. Eleanor," she corrected, "will be working closely together. Now let me show you to your quarters. You have 3 days to learn the contents of this book before your first shift." My room was in the staff wing, small but comfortable, with a window overlooking the gardens. As soon as Eleanor left, I opened the rulebook and began to read. The first pages contained standard hotel policies: dress code, conduct expectations, emergency procedures. But beginning on page 13, the rules took a decidedly strange turn. Rule 1, never serve a guest wearing all white after 9 p.m. Direct them politely to the concierge. Rule 2. The mirror behind the bar must be polished 3 times daily. At dawn, 5:18 a.m. to 5:42 a.m. Noon, 12 p.m. precisely. And dusk, between 8:27 p.m. and 9:03 p.m., depending on the season. Use only the special cloth stored in the 3rd drawer. Rule 3. If a guest orders the Mackinac Special, do not attempt to make the drink. Smile politely and inform them that they should speak with the concierge immediately. Rule 4. Room 317 receives their drinks in copper cups only, no exceptions, regardless of the beverage ordered. Rule 5. When it snows, even in summer, no ice is to be served in any drink until the snowfall ceases completely. Rule 6. The antique gramophone in the corner of the bar is purely decorative. It must never be touched, wound, or played under any circumstances. Rule 7. If piano music is heard after 2 a.m., lock the bar immediately. Use the iron key, not brass, and remain inside until 4:17 a.m. precisely. Rule 8. The bar must never be left unattended between midnight and 3 a.m., even for a moment. If emergency requires your departure, the closing procedures on page 37 must be followed exactly. Rule 9. Bottles must be arranged according to the diagram on page 24. The positioning must be checked 3 times per shift and after any tremor, no matter how slight. Rule 10. Should any guest's eyes appear to reflect light differently than normal, particularly with a greenish or amber glow, serve them precisely 1 drink, no more. Make discreet note of their appearance in the logbook. Rule 11. The small door behind the 3rd panel of wainscoting leads to the wine cellar. Never open this door between dusk and dawn. Rule 12. Salt must be kept on your person at all times while tending bar. The container must be silver or lined with silver. The rules continued for pages, growing increasingly specific and bizarre. Some seemed to contradict others, with exceptions based on lunar phases, weather conditions, or the presence of certain guests. By the time I reached the end, my head was spinning. I was tempted to believe this was an elaborate prank played on new staff members, but the deadly seriousness in Eleanor's eyes when she'd handed me the book suggested otherwise. Besides, the Grand Hotel had a reputation for eccentric luxury. Perhaps these peculiar traditions were part of its charm. My first shift began on a Thursday evening. Eleanor watched me like a hawk as I prepared the bar, checking the bottle arrangement against the diagram in the rulebook 3 times as required. "The mirror," she reminded me sharply at 8:30 p.m. "It's not quite dusk yet," I replied, checking my watch. "Today, dusk begins at 8:27 p.m, she said. "The timing changes. That's why you must consult the almanac each morning." I quickly grabbed the special polishing cloth, a soft, slightly yellowish material that smelled faintly of lavender and something metallic, and approached the ornate mirror that ran the length of the bar's back wall. As I polished, I could have sworn the reflections moved a fraction of a second after I did, but I attributed it to fatigue from memorizing all those rules. The evening progressed smoothly. The clientele was exactly what you'd expect at a luxury hotel: wealthy couples in summer finery, multi-generational families with old money written all over them, the occasional celebrity trying to blend in. I mixed classic cocktails with practiced precision, earning appreciative nods from Eleanor. At precisely 9:30 p.m, a striking woman entered the bar alone. She wore a white dress that seemed to glow softly in the bar's dim lighting, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders in gentle waves. She moved with fluid grace to an empty stool directly in front of me. I felt Eleanor stiffen beside me, her hand gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "Good evening," I said, remembering Rule 1. "I'm afraid I can't serve you at the bar this evening, but our concierge would be delighted to assist you." The woman's smile faltered, then returned, slightly wider than before. "Surely you can make an exception. I've had such a tiresome day." "I'm terribly sorry," I insisted politely. Hotel policy. But Thomas at the concierge desk will take excellent care of you. For a brief moment, so brief I thought I'd imagined it, her face seemed to change, features shifting, like smoke under glass. Then she stood, still smiling. "Another time, perhaps," she said, a voice carrying an odd echo, despite the bar's plush acoustic treatments. She turned and left, the white fabric of her dress swirling like mist. Eleanor's grip on my wrist relaxed. "Well done," she murmured. "The last bartender who served her after 9 was found in his room the next morning, frozen solid. In August." I laughed nervously, waiting for her to crack a smile. She didn't. As the weeks passed, I settled into a routine at the Grand. The rules became second nature. Checking the almanac each morning, polishing the mirror at the prescribed times, arranging bottles according to the diagram. And with each passing day, I witnessed small occurrences that made it harder to dismiss the rules as mere superstition. One afternoon in July, a man ordered the Mackinac special with a strange intensity in his eyes. Following Rule 3, I directed him to the concierge. Through the bar's windows, I watched as Thomas the concierge led the man down to the boathouse dock, where they had a heated conversation. The man eventually boarded the next ferry off the island, looking back at the hotel with naked fear on his face. Another evening, a delivery arrived for room 317, a Manhattan that I carefully prepared in one of the special copper cups kept under lock and key. When I commented on the unusual requirement to Eleanor, she simply said, "The Aldridge family has certain sensitivities. They've been summer guests since 1892. "The same family for all those years?" I asked. "The very same," she replied, giving me a look that discouraged further questions. Perhaps most disturbing was the night in early August when, despite the clear summer evening, fat snowflakes began falling outside the bar's windows. They fell for exactly 17 minutes before stopping abruptly. During that time, Eleanor stood watch over the ice, ensuring not a single cube found its way into any drink. "It's just a weather anomaly," I said. "Lake effect snow can be unpredictable." Eleanor gave me a pitying look. "Is that what you truly believe, Jackson? After everything you've seen?" By September, the summer crowds had thinned as families returned home for the school year. The island took on a quieter, more intimate atmosphere. It was during this lull that I met Lillian Hargrove, the hotel's historian. She was cataloguing photographs in the library when I delivered her afternoon tea, a ritual Eleanor insisted on maintaining, even though it wasn't in our job description. Spread across the table were dozens of black and white photographs chronicling the hotel's illustrious past. "You must be the new bartender," she said, looking up from her work. Lillian was perhaps 40, with intelligent eyes behind vintage cat eye glasses. "I'm Lillian, keeper of secrets and finder of facts." "Jackson," I replied, setting down her tea. "Mixer of drinks and follower of extremely specific rules." She laughed knowingly. "Ah, Eleanor's famous rulebook. Tell me, what do you make of it all?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure what to think. Some of it seems peculiar." "The Grand Hotel exists at a crossroads, Mr. Mercer," she said, selecting a photograph and sliding it toward me. "Not just geographically, between lakes and states, but between other things as well." The photograph showed the bar circa 1920s filled with elegant guests in period attire. As I examined it more closely, I noticed something odd about the mirror behind the bar. While everything else was clearly reflected, the bartender, a man with a thin moustache and slick back hair, cast no reflection at all. "A double exposure," I suggested. "Every photograph of that particular bartender shows the same anomaly," Lillian replied. "His name was Vincent Holloway. He disappeared during his shift one night in 1927. The official story was that he stole from the register and fled on the midnight ferry, but the ferry captain's log showed no such passenger." She pulled out another photograph, this one from the 1950s. And here's Oliver Reed, bartender from 1949 to 1953, found in the wine cellar one morning, though the door was locked from the outside. Cause of death, hypothermia, despite it being the middle of summer, and the cellar being precisely 55 degrees. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Are you saying the rules in that book keep you alive? Yes, I rather think they do. Lillian sipped her tea calmly. The Grand wasn't built here by accident, you know. The island has always been a special place. The Native Americans called it Mackinac, the Great Turtle. They believed it was the first land to emerge after a great flood, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. You can't seriously believe. I deal in historical facts, Mr. Mercer, and the facts are these. Bartenders who follow Eleanor's rules tend to live long, healthy lives. Those who don't. She gestured to the photographs spread before her. Well, the history speaks for itself. As autumn painted the island in brilliant hues of red and gold, the hotel began preparing for its annual closure. The Grand traditionally closed from November through April, with only a skeleton maintenance crew remaining through the harsh Michigan winter. Will you return next season? Eleanor asked one evening as we closed the bar. I haven't decided, I admitted. The truth was, despite the strange occurrences, or perhaps because of them, I found myself reluctant to leave. The Grand had woven its spell around me, its mysteries pulling me deeper with each passing day. You should consider staying through the winter, she suggested casually. The hotel needs a caretaker for the bar during the off-season. Someone to maintain standards. You've never stayed for winter? Not for many years, she replied. My sister in Traverse City needs me. But the bar cannot be left unattended. Not completely. The offer was unexpected but intriguing. A quiet winter on the island, with time to explore the hotel's secrets and perhaps learn more about the strange rules that govern the bar. I'll think about it, I promised. That night I woke suddenly at 2:13 a.m. Piano music drifted through the staff quarters, a haunting melody I didn't recognize, played with exquisite skill. Half asleep, I admired the music for several seconds before Rule 7 crashed into my consciousness. If piano music is heard after 2 a.m, lock the bar immediately. I threw on clothes and raced through the darkened corridors. The music grew louder as I approached the geranium bar, the notes becoming discordant, almost frantic. The bar's doors stood ajar, spilling faint blue light into the hallway. Inside, the bar appeared untouched, but the temperature had dropped dramatically. My breath clouded before me as I moved swiftly to the antique cabinet where the keys were kept. Rule 7 specified the iron key, not brass. With trembling fingers, I located it and turned to the doors. The music reached a crescendo and I caught movement in the mirror from the corner of my eye. A figure stood reflected in the glass, tall, unnaturally thin, dressed in outdated evening clothes. But when I turned, the bar was empty, save for myself. I locked the doors with the iron key, my heart pounding against my ribs. The moment the lock clicked into place, the music stopped abruptly. The temperature began to rise slowly, and I sank onto a bar stool, checking my watch. According to Rule 7, I needed to remain in the locked bar until 4:17 a.m. precisely, nearly 2 hours to contemplate what I'd just experienced. The mirror continued to trouble me. As I sat motionless at the bar, the reflections seemed to move independently, subtle shifts in position, glasses that caught non-existent light, shadows that deepened and receded without corresponding movement in the actual room. At 4:16 a.m, I stood ready at the door, key in hand. At exactly 4:17, I unlocked it and stepped into the hallway, and nearly collided with Mr. Thornfield, the hotel manager. "Ah, Mr. Mercer," he said, seemingly unsurprised to find me there at such an hour. "Trust all is well in the geranium bar this evening?" "Yes, sir," I replied, unnerved by his timing. "Just following protocol. excellent. His eyes caught the hallway light strangely, reflecting back with an amber glow. Protocols exist for reasons, wouldn't you agree? I remembered Rule 10 about guests whose eyes reflected light differently. Mr. Thornfield wasn't a guest, but still, I felt a prickle of unease. Indeed, sir. Eleanor speaks highly of your attention to detail. He smiled, revealing teeth that seemed just slightly too uniform, too white. Sleep well, Mr. Mercer. What remains of the night, anyway? I decided to stay through the winter. The Grand Hotel officially closed on October 31st, with a lavish Halloween masquerade ball as its final event of the season. The next day, most of the staff departed on the last regular ferry, leaving behind a team of 20 to maintain the massive structure through the bitter Michigan winter. Eleanor left me with a thick manila envelope. Additional winter protocols, she explained. The rules change when the island empties. Be particularly vigilant about Rule 2. The mirror must be polished precisely at the designated times, regardless of weather or circumstances. I still don't understand why, I admitted. She considered me for a moment. Reflective surfaces are boundaries, Jackson. Not just between light and image, but between other things. The Grand stands at a crossroads, and the bar sits at its heart. A crossroads between what? Between the world you know and the worlds you don't, she said simply. Polish the mirror, maintain the arrangements. Don't open the cellar door after dark. I'll return in April, and I expect to find you alive. With that cryptic advice, she departed, leaving me as the sole caretaker of the Geranium Bar. November brought the first heavy snows, transforming the island into a white wonderland. Ferry service reduced to twice weekly, weather permitting, and many days the island was completely isolated by ice and stormy conditions on the straits. I settled into a quiet routine. Though no guests remained, I maintained the bar exactly as specified in Eleanor's rulebook, plus the additional winter protocols, polishing the mirror at the prescribed times, checking bottle arrangements, ensuring the gramophone remained untouched. Lillian remained on the island as well, using the winter months to conduct deeper research into the hotel's history. We often spent evenings together in the library, where she shared discoveries from the hotel archives. Did you know, she said one snowy evening, in December, that the original owner of the Grand Hotel died in your bar? I didn't, I replied, sipping the hot toddy I'd prepared for us both. Frederick Montague built the hotel in 1887, dead by 1889. The official cause was heart failure, but hotel records tell a different story. She slid an aged ledger across the table. According to the night manager's log, Montague was found behind the bar, his body contorted in an unnatural position, with his eyes missing but no evidence of their removal. I felt that familiar chill. And you believe this is connected to the rules in Eleanor's book? I believe the rules were written in blood, Jackson. Each one represents a lesson learned at terrible cost. She tapped the leather-bound rulebook I carried everywhere. This isn't the original, you know. The first one was bound in something other than leather. I chose not to ask what material she was implying. As December deepened, strange occurrences increased in frequency. Twice I heard piano music after 2 a.m. and followed the lockdown procedure. Once, during a blizzard, I observed snow falling upward past the bar windows for exactly 7 minutes. Most disturbing were the frequent glimpses of movement in the mirror when the bar was empty. During a particularly violent storm in January, I discovered a hidden room behind the bar. A fierce gust had blown open a section of wood paneling I'd always assumed was decorative, revealing a narrow doorway. Inside was a small chamber lined with shelves containing journals, dozens of them, dating back to the hotel's opening. These were the private logs of previous bartenders, documenting their experiences at the Grand. I spent nights reading their accounts, each more disturbing than the last. They described encounters with guests who weren't quite human, incidents of time behaving strangely within the bar, and the consequences of broken rules. Vincent Holloway's final entry from 1927 sent shivers down my spine. The woman in white came again tonight. Eleanor was indisposed, and I felt sorry for the poor thing, standing there so forlorn. What harm could one drink do? She asked for a mirror behind her glass, an old custom, she said, to see who might approach from behind. When I looked into the reflection, I saw not the bar but a vast grey landscape, unlike anything on this earth. She smiled at me with too many teeth and said, "You'll visit me soon." I fear she was right. The mirror grows thin tonight. No further entries appeared in his journal. By February, the island was effectively cut off. Ice bridges formed between Mackinac and the mainland, but blizzard conditions made crossing dangerous. I maintained the bar meticulously, finding comfort in the strict routine of the rules. One evening, as I polished the mirror at dusk, Lillian burst into the bar, her face pale. "We need to talk," she said urgently. "I found something in the archives, a blueprint of the original hotel. The geranium bar was built differently than the rest of the structure." She unfurled a yellow document across the bar top. "See these markings? The bar sits exactly at the center of an 8-pointed geometric pattern that extends through the entire hotel foundation. And directly beneath," she pointed to markings indicating a chamber below the bar's floor. "The wine cellar?" I suggested. "Much deeper," she replied. "This chamber predates the hotel, Jackson. It appears on island maps from the early 1800s, labelled in French as La Porte, the door." A loud crash from the kitchen interrupted us. We both jumped, and I automatically checked the bottle arrangement as required, after any tremor. Nothing was out of place. "Just the wind," I said, though the night was still. Lillian lowered her voice. "The rules aren't just superstition or tradition. They're a ritual, one that keeps something contained. The original hotel owner didn't just build here for the view. He built the Grand as a beautiful prison." "For what?" Before she could answer, the lights flickered and went out. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, bathing the bar in dim amber light. "Check your watch," Lillian whispered. It was 9:03 p.m. exactly, the end of the dusk period for mirror polishing on February 12th. "Did you complete Rule 2? She asked urgently. "Of course," I said, but a cold doubt crept through me. The conversation about the blueprint had distracted me. Had I finished the polishing properly? I couldn't remember the final strokes. That night, I dreamed of the mirror. In the dream, I stood before it, but my reflection performed different actions than my own. Dream Me reached out to touch the glass, but my reflection reached back with elongated fingers that stretched toward the boundary between us. I woke in a cold sweat at 3:33 a.m. Something was wrong. I could feel it, a pressure in the air, a subtle wrongness that raised the hair on my arms. Grabbing the rulebook, I hastily dressed and made my way to the bar. The corridor leading to the geranium bar was freezing cold, my breath clouding before me in thick plumes. As I approached, I heard voices, multiple conversations, laughter, the clink of glasses, as if the bar were full of patrons. But the hotel had been closed for months, and we were island-bound in the dead of winter. The doors to the bar stood open, warm light spilling out. Inside, impossibly, the geranium bar was packed with people in elegant evening attire, mingling and drinking as if at the height of summer season. A bartender I'd never seen before, a thin man with a neatly trimmed moustache and slicked back hair, mixed drinks with fluid grace. Vincent Holloway, the bartender who disappeared in 1927. He looked up as I stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of pity and warning. He shook his head slightly, gesturing for me to leave. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. This wasn't possible. The hotel was nearly empty. These people, this scene, it couldn't exist. The mirror. Something had gone wrong with the mirror. I ran to find Lillian, pounding on her door until she answered, bleary-eyed and confused. "The bar," I gasped. "It's full of people. Vincent Holloway is tending bar." She was instantly alert. "Then we're already too late. The barrier is breaking down." "What barrier? What's happening?" "I told you the Grand sits at a crossroads," she said, pulling on a heavy sweater. "The bar is the center point, the place where worlds touch most closely. The rules maintain the separation between those worlds. If you've broken one..." "I didn't break any rules," I insisted, then hesitated. "At least, I don't think I did." The mirror polishing at dusk. We were talking about the blueprint. "Even an incomplete ritual can cause a fracture," she said grimly. "We need to find Mr. Thornfield." As we hurried through the darkened hotel, I noticed other anomalies. Rooms that should have been closed for the season showed light beneath the doors. Voices and music drifted from empty hallways. The temperature fluctuated wildly from one corridor to the next. We found Mr. Thornfield in his office, calmly reviewing papers as if it were the middle of the day, rather than 4 a.m. during a paranormal event. "Ah," he said, looking up as we burst in. "You've noticed our guests have arrived." "What guests?" Lillian demanded. "The hotel is closed. The island is inaccessible." "To conventional travelers, perhaps." He smiled, revealing those 2 perfect teeth. "But the Grand Hotel never truly closes, Miss Hargrove. It merely shifts its clientele." His eyes reflected the lamplight with that strange amber glow I'd noticed before. "Who are you?" I asked. "What are you?" "I am the caretaker," he replied simply, "as were those before me, and as will be those after. The Grand stands at a junction between worlds, Mr. Mercer. Usually the boundaries remain intact, thanks to certain precautions." His gaze flicked meaningfully toward my rulebook. "But occasionally there are slippages." "The mirror," I said. "I didn't finish polishing it properly." "Indeed," he sighed. "A small error with potentially significant consequences. The mirror is thinning rapidly." "How do we fix it?" Lillian asked. "We don't," Thornfield replied. "Not directly. The ritual must be completed properly at the next designated time dawn. Until then, we maintain distance. The entities using this opportunity to cross over are drawn primarily to the one who failed the ritual." He looked at me with something approaching sympathy. "They'll be looking for you, Mr. Mercer. I suggest you remain hidden until dawn 5:37 a.m. today, according to the almanac." "And then what?" I asked. "Then you return to the bar and complete Rule 2 correctly. If the damage is not too severe, the boundary will restabilize." "And if it is too severe?" Lillian pressed. Thornfield's expression darkened. "Then Mr. Mercer joins the ranks of bartenders who have learned the hard way why the rules exist." We holed up in Lillian's research room, barricading the door with a heavy bookcase. Through the window we watched as strange lights moved across the island, weaving between trees, hovering over the snow, occasionally congregating near the hotel before dispersing again. "They're searching," Lillian whispered, "looking for a way to fully breach the boundary." "What exactly are they?" I asked. "Ghosts? Demons?" "Neither. Both. Something else entirely." She shrugged helplessly. "The indigenous people believed there were beings who existed long before humans, entities that were pushed aside when our world formed. They retreat to places where reality is thin, waiting for opportunities. And the Grand Hotel was built on such a place." "Not by accident," she confirmed. "Frederick Montague knew what he was doing. The hotel's design, the specific geometric layout, it's all part of a containing structure. The rules maintain its integrity. Each one serves a specific purpose in keeping the boundary intact." As dawn approached, we prepared to make our way to the bar. According to Thornfield, I needed to properly complete the mirror polishing ritual at exactly the right time to repair the damage. But as we removed the barricade from the door, we heard something in the hallway outside. the soft click of footsteps approaching our hiding place. Not the heavy tread of Thornfield or any of the maintenance staff, but something lighter, almost delicate. A gentle knock sounded at the door. "Jackson," called a woman's voice, melodious, inviting. "I know you're in there. Don't you recognize me? We've met before." A chill ran through me as I remembered the woman in white I'd refused to serve months ago. "Don't answer," Lillian mouthed silently. "I only want what I'm owed," the voice continued. "One drink, properly served. Is that really too much to ask after all this time?" The doorknob turned slowly, though I was certain we had locked it. "We need another way out," I whispered urgently. Lillian pointed to a maintenance access way, a small door that connected to the hotel's extensive network of service corridors. We slipped through just as the main door began to open. The service corridors were narrow and dimly lit by emergency lighting. We navigated the labyrinthine passages, trying to make our way to the geranium bar. My watch showed 5:22 a.m. and 15 minutes until dawn. Ritual had to be completed. We emerged into the main corridor just down from the bar. To my horror, it was now swarming with guests. Elegant figures in evening attire from various eras, mingling and conversing in dozens of languages, some of which sounded like no human tongue I'd ever heard. They moved strangely, as if underwater, their proportions subtly wrong. Limbs too long, necks too flexible, eyes too large or small or numerous. "We'll never get through unnoticed," I whispered. "There's another way," Lillian replied. "Through the cellar. Rule 11 forbids opening the cellar door between dusk and dawn, but dawn is in 15 minutes. We might make it." It was a desperate gamble, but our only option. We backtracked to the service corridor and descended to the lowest level of the hotel. The door to the wine cellar, the small door behind the third panel of wainscoting mentioned in Rule 11, was locked, but Lillian produced a master key. "Hotel historian," she explained with a tight smile. "I've got access everywhere." The wine cellar was frigid, our breath forming thick clouds in the beam of Lillian's flashlight. Row upon row of bottles lined the walls, many covered in dust and bearing labels from vineyards long defunct. At the far end, a narrow staircase led upward. "That should come up behind the bar," Lillian said, consulting a mental map of the hotel's layout. As we moved between the wine racks, I noticed something odd: frost patterns on the bottles nearest the center of the room, spreading outward like crystalline fingers. In the middle of the cellar floor was a circular depression, about 6 feet in diameter, covered by an ornate area rug that seemed ludicrously out of place in a storage room. "Don't look at it," Lillian warned, pulling me along. "We're running out of time." We hurried up the narrow stairs, emerging exactly where Lillian had predicted, through a hidden panel behind the bar. The geranium bar was still impossibly full of eerily wrong guests, but none had noticed our entrance. My watch read 5:35 a.m. 2 minutes until dawn. The special polishing cloth was still in its drawer, exactly where it should be. I retrieved it silently, praying none of the entities would notice us. The mirror behind the bar showed a scene entirely different from the room we stood in. Not the crowded bar, but a vast grey landscape under a sunless sky, where tall, thin figures moved with terrible purpose towards what appeared to be a narrow crack of golden light. At exactly 5:37 a.m, I began polishing the mirror according to the precise pattern specified in the rulebook. 3 vertical strokes, 7 horizontal, then a specific circular motion repeated 13 times. As I worked, the bar around us seemed to waver, like heat rising from summer pavement. The guests finally noticed us. They turned as one, conversations dying mid-sentence, drinks lowered in unison. Their features began to shift and change, becoming less human with each passing second. "Hurry," Lillian urged. I was on the 11th circular motion when the woman in white appeared beside me, her face inches from mine. "So close," she whispered, her breath like winter wind. So very close we came, but there will be other chances, other mistakes. Her hand shot out with inhuman speed, grasping my wrist and stopping the polishing motion. "One drink," she hissed, her face elongating, eyes widening to consume her face. "That's all I asked for. Now you'll serve us forever." Lillian grabbed the cloth from my frozen hand and completed the final 2 circular motions. The mirror flashed blindingly bright, then rippled like disturbed water. The woman in white screamed, a sound like breaking glass and winter storms, as she and every other entity in the bar were pulled towards the mirror's surface. I felt myself being dragged along with them, an irresistible force pulling me towards the glass. Lillian grabbed my other arm, trying to anchor me, but the pull was too strong. My feet slid across the polished floor as the mirror's surface stretched and distorted, becoming a vortex that consumed everything in its path. "Hold on!" Lillian screamed, her voice barely audible over the howling wind that had materialized in the bar. The woman in white still clutched my wrist, her fingers elongated into bone-white talons that pierced my skin. Blood trickled down my arm as she smiled with too many teeth. "If I go back, you come with me," she snarled. I saw Thornfield appear in the doorway, his eyes now glowing like molten gold. He shouted something I couldn't hear, gesturing frantically at the bottles behind the bar. Rule 9, bottles must be arranged according to the diagram on page 24. With my free hand, I reached back and knocked over a specific bottle, an ancient, dusty cognac that always occupied the 3rd position from the left on the top shelf. As it crashed to the floor, the pulling sensation abruptly ceased. The woman in white screamed in frustration as her grip on my wrist loosened. The mirror's surface solidified again, trapping the entities mid-exodus. Their distorted faces pressed against the glass from the inside, expressions frozen in eternal rage and hunger. And then, silence. The bar was empty save for Lillian, Thornfield and myself. "Quick thinking," Thornfield said, straightening his tie, as if nothing unusual had occurred. "The emergency protocol in Rule 9. Not many bartenders remember that one in a crisis." My wrist throbbed where the woman's talons had pierced the skin. 5 perfect puncture wounds formed a crescent pattern that burned like ice. "What happens now?" I asked, cradling my injured arm. "Now we repair the damage," Thornfield replied. "The boundary is stabilized but weakened. It will require constant maintenance until the next solstice." "And my arm?" He examined the wounds with clinical detachment. "A marking. She's claimed you, in a sense. It will make you more noticeable to her kind." "Meaning?" "Meaning you'll need to be particularly vigilant about following the rules from now on. No more mistakes, Mr. Mercer. The next breach might not be so easily contained." In the days that followed, the Grand Hotel returned to its winter quiet. The maintenance staff seemed oblivious to the night's events, though they commented on the unusual cold snap that had frozen pipes throughout the East Wing. Lillian helped me research the wound on my wrist, which refused to heal and continued to burn with uncomfortable coldness. In the hotel archives, we found records of other marked employees over the years, all of whom had experienced similar close encounters. "It's not a death sentence," she assured me, "more like a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That you're now part of the grand secret." She closed the archive ledger carefully. "The rules aren't just for your safety anymore. They're for everyone's." As February gave way to March, preparations began for the coming season. Work crews arrived to refresh paint, repair winter damage, and prepare the grounds for the spring opening. I continued my bartending duties with meticulous attention to every rule. The mirror remained troubling. Though I polished it exactly as prescribed 3 times daily, I often caught glimpses of that grey landscape on the other side, and sometimes faces pressed against the glass when I was alone in the bar. The woman in white appeared frequently, watching me with patient malice. "You'll make another mistake eventually," she whispered one night, her voice somehow audible through the solid glass. "Everyone does." Despite these unsettling experiences, I found myself reluctant to leave when April arrived. The Grand Hotel had woven itself into my being, its mysteries becoming part of me. The mark on my wrist served as a constant reminder of the thin boundary between worlds and my role in maintaining it. Eleanor returned on schedule, looking refreshed from her winter away. She took one look at my wrist and nodded knowingly. "So you've been marked," she said. "I suspected it might happen. You have the sight." The sight? The ability to see what others can't or won't. She rolled up her sleeve to reveal a similar crescent scar on her forearm, long healed, but still visible. "Welcome to the Fellowship, Jackson." "Is that why you hired me? Because you knew I'd see them?" "I hired you because you have excellent references and make a perfect Manhattan," she replied with a rare smile. "But yes, I suspected you had the potential to understand what the Grand truly is." As the hotel bustled with pre-season activity, Eleanor and I worked together to prepare the geranium bar for opening day. She reviewed the winter logs I'd kept, nodding with approval at my detailed documentation of anomalies and incidents. "You've done well," she said. "Better than most first years. Will you stay for another season?" I touched the crescent mark on my wrist, feeling its cold pulse beneath my fingers. "Do I have a choice?" "We all have choices, Jackson. But once you've seen beyond the veil, ordinary life tends to lose its luster." She arranged bottles with practiced precision. "Besides, you're marked now. They'll find you wherever you go. At least here, you know the rules to keep them at bay." I thought about leaving, returning to a normal job in a normal bar, where the only spirits were in bottles and the only rules involved last call and happy hour specials. But Eleanor was right. How could I go back to that life knowing what I now knew? "One more season," I agreed. "At least." She nodded, satisfied. "Just remember, the rules exist for a reason, each one written in blood and experience. Follow them precisely, no matter how arbitrary they might seem." "And if I don't?" Eleanor's gaze drifted to the mirror, where a shadow moved independently of anything in the room. "Then you'll learn why we needed a new bartender last year," she said quietly. "My predecessor made a simple mistake, just once. He forgot to polish the mirror at dusk during a particularly busy evening." I felt a chill remembering my own near catastrophe. What happened to him? No one knows exactly. He vanished during his shift. The official story is that he walked off the job, caught the last ferry, and never returned. She straightened a bottle that was millimeters out of alignment. But those of us who know the truth understand he went somewhere much farther than the mainland. As opening day approached, I added one final entry to my winter log. The Grand Hotel stands at a crossroads, not just between lakes and states, but between worlds. The geranium bar sits at its heart, and I stand behind that bar, guardian of a boundary I never knew existed until I came here. The woman in white watches from the mirror, patient and hungry. The mark on my wrist pulses with cold fire, a constant reminder of how close I came to her world and how thin the barrier remains. I understand the rules now. Each one serves a purpose, each born from someone's fatal mistake. I will not add to that legacy. I will polish the mirror at dawn, noon, and dusk. I will arrange the bottles according to the diagram. I will never serve anyone wearing white after 9 p.m. And perhaps, if I'm careful enough, skillful enough, lucky enough, I'll survive to pass these rules to the next bartender when my time at the Grand is done. For now, I stand my post. I follow the rules. And I never, ever look too long into the mirror behind the bar.